Last week, I made a video about some potential X-Men in the Marvel Cinematic Universe casting news. So these are all rumors, leaks, probably mostly speculation. And after I made that video, a lot of you guys mentioned other people that had been either leaked or rumored or whatever to have been auditioning or offered a role or whatever as some other character in the X-Men group. And partially I focused on the 3 that I did because they were like in one article that I thought was very nice and tidy, but I want to make another video talking about these other people, and this probably isn't even the most cohesive group either. There's probably other people that have been rumored. A lot of this comes from the fact that, like, say Denzel is in Black Panther 3 and people want him to be Magneto or Apocalypse or some X-Men villain, and while that's possible, I'm going for people where it's like this up-and-coming actor has apparently maybe talked to Marvel about maybe one of these roles. This is mostly for fun. So I'm going to start like I did last time with another Cyclops. So last time we talked about Harris Dickinson from Baby Girl and The Kingsman potentially being up for the role of Cyclops. There was another actor who around the same time was getting talked about as potential Cyclops, and honestly I took that one a little less seriously, but I do want to talk about it here. This actor is Jack Champion. You probably know Jack Champion from the Avatar movies, where he plays a character named Spider, and he's one of the only human characters who interacts with the Na'vi, so like this is a face you might recognize. If you've seen Scream 6, he was there. I've not seen Scream 6, but you know, there he was. And then he was in a movie called Retribution, which we did cover on the podcast, where Liam Neeson spends the whole movie in a car. They didn't do an honest trailer about it, but if they did, they should have called it Taking a Seat. And apparently he's rumored for Cyclops. Now, I think that's very interesting, because that paints a picture of a very different Cyclops than Harris Dickinson. With a lot of these casting rumors, I usually will look at the actors that are being cast, potentially that'll help to understand, like, this is what they're going for. For instance, if it's Harris Dickinson, the way that they could play the X-Men is they're all in their 30s, most of the ones that you're familiar with from 97, and they all went through the program already. Now they're either adults who teach for the Institute or do other stuff and then come together for X-Men, you know, business. But then there's going to be a new class of child X-Men that will be introduced in the movie or something like that. Like, that's the way you could do it. You could also do it the way that like X-Men Evolution did it, where you have younger versions of all the characters, like a high school age Cyclops, Rogue, Jean Grey, all that stuff. Harris Dickinson I don't think would work for high school age Cyclops, but Jack Champion would, because, and I've looked this up because I was wrong so many times when I made the last video that I had to keep correcting myself. Jack Champion is currently 20. He is 6'2", so that's a Cyclopsy height. Tall, slim, that feels right. And he is from Virginia. That won't matter as much here, but it will matter for the next couple of people. Having only seen him in Avatar and the Taking a Seat movie, I don't think he's like a bad Cyclops. He feels like a very average Cyclops casting choice, albeit quite young. Because if he's 20 now, he'd be 24 when the movie shoots or was released or whatever, but still, like, that is a young adult Cyclops as opposed to a full adult Cyclops. And part of me, based on things we've heard so far, would maybe assume we're getting something closer to an adult Cyclops and like an adult team of X-Men. And you know what you can compare it to? Think about the way X-Men 97 frames the Cyclops characters versus like Jubilee. There is an older group of X-Men, and then there are these younger X-Men who are coming into the group now, and they look up to these older guys who are like a good 10 years older than them. For that reason, I don't think Jack Champion gels with the rest of the ages we've heard so far. Although Sadie Sink, one of the potential Jeans, is much older than Jack Champion, but she could play a younger version of Jean Grey, maybe? I don't know. I'm not convinced. The only thing with Jack Champion is he is not like a humongous actor who's everywhere right now, say like Harris Dickinson, who was just in Baby Girl, which was a movie a lot of people were talking about. Jack Champion, I mean, obviously he's in those Avatar movies, which are a big deal, but like, he is not a household name or an actor who I would even expect people to recognize it, like they just saw a picture of him. So maybe that is a more reliable rumor. I don't know. However, I could also be convinced that he's not going out for Cyclops. Maybe the scooper got it wrong and he's actually in the running for like Angel or Iceman or something like that. I don't think there's any X-Men that he reads as a perfect version of. Like, just looking at him, I'm not like, oh my god, that's a Nightcrawler. But, you know, I could see a world where he's in this movie. The idea of him playing the Cyclops of these movies feels a little weird to me, just to me, because that would pretty much disqualify everything else we've heard so far, and also would be kind of limiting because you don't want many characters to be that much older than Cyclops on the X-Men. Like in this version of the story, Jack Champion, Cyclops would be much younger than Kate Bishop. And like there was a time when a time displaced version of Cyclops and different X-Men, came to the main comics universe, but I don't think that's what we're doing here. So first rumor, Jack Champion, don't love it. Second one, we're gonna do 2 Storms here. I was kind of hoping that we would get a third Storm, and I could just save that for the Oops All Storms video, but there are a couple of actors that have come up for Storm. The first one is Ayo Edebiri. Most people probably know her from The Bear, movie Bottoms, which she also wrote. And then this upcoming movie called Opus, which is there's a cult, and then it's run by a musician, and she's a journalist. It looks cool. She's been around for a while. She's done a lot of voice work over the last couple of years. She was in the Ninja Turtles movie. She was also supposed to be in Thunderbolts. She was going to be, I guess, the assistant to Julia Louis-Dreyfus' character, but she had to leave that role because of scheduling, which makes sense because of how much that schedule seemed to shift around. And the role eventually went to Geraldine Viswanathan. But that says she's interested and she's open to something like that. Could she be Storm? Okay, so a couple things. She's 29. A 29-year-old Storm and a 20-year-old Cyclops, I could see. I do think Storm, and maybe this is just the X-Men evolution in me, I think Storm can be a little bit older than the rest of the X-Men, and it's fine. Because she is supposed to feel kind of different from the rest of the X-Men, the same way that, Magneto treats her differently because she's so much more powerful and treats her like a goddess. And obviously, she could be the same age as Cyclops, but I could see a world where they do something like that. However, she would be the same age as Harris Dickinson because she is 29. Interesting thing about her, 5'6", so not very tall, not very short. Part of me does just picture Storm as pretty tall, but that is just because I feel like, all characters in comics are tall. And if you do a good job, you can use the fancy lighting and the egg crates to make any actor look tall. I think Ayo Edebiri, extremely talented, very smart. I don't think she's a awesome Storm though. She reads, and maybe it's just me, as very American. She's from Boston. She's had a lot of these roles where she plays a working class American chef or high school student or something like that. And again, I'm not saying that I don't think she could play as an African goddess basically, but that's definitely not what I would go to her for. I don't think we've ever seen her do that kind of accent or play that kind of character. Now, to be fair, we did have 2 Storms. We had Halle Berry in the original Fox X-Men, Gen 1, and then Gen 2 we had Alexander Shipp. Neither of them had an African accent. In fact, Halle Berry very famously just drops it in the second movie, and I remember at the time everybody was kind of confused, but it was something that I don't think then was viewed as essential for this character. But if you look at something like Black Panther, plenty of actors there do a very passable accent, and many of them, almost all of them, are from either the UK or America. So this can be done. I specifically just see Ayo as a different kind of character. And I think she could play any other X-Men. Honestly, if we're talking about the Keke Palmer Rogue thing, I don't hate her as Rogue just because Rogue does have some of those qualities. Rogue is a regular person who, she comes from Alabama or whatever, but she is supposed to feel somewhat girl next door, very relatable. Whereas I don't think Storm is. I also think part of this, and now I'm hearing myself say it a bunch, is if you're an actor like Sadie Sink, who is well known for one character on a TV show, and Ayo has been doing lots of good work, but she is mostly known, I would say, for The Bear. And I think there's a possibility that people would see her and go, oh, it's like Storm, the Bear. I don't know. I just don't know. It's the same problem that a lot of the Seinfeld cast got caught in and a lot of the Friends cast got caught in, which is people could not see them in other roles besides those very iconic roles. And because of repetition and how many times you see a character in a TV show, it does feel harder to separate those. So a big lead in a very popular television show, Ayo Edebiri, and by the way, I just looked her name up because I was I must be pronouncing some of this wrong. Turns out I was pronouncing a lot of it wrong. I apologize, Ayo. But Ayo Edebiri definitely would not be on the top of my list for a Storm. If she got the role, this would be one where I'd be I don't necessarily see it, but I'm interested. The same way that Nicholas Hoult Lex Luthor is this is an unusual pick, but it's someone who has a lot of range and is very smart and could do something really interesting with this character. Just not who I would usually pick. Another actor who's apparently in the running for Storm, an actor I actually covered in my X-Men casting videos way back, is DeWanda Wise. People probably know DeWanda Wise from the Jurassic World Dominion movie, which was the third Jurassic World movie. And if you know her from that, honestly, I'd be kind of surprised because her part was very small, especially considering halfway through the movie, it just becomes oh, it's the old guys and they're back. And so she was part of that team, but I would say her role was not as big as I'd expected seeing her in like the marketing. She's also in the movie Imaginary. That's like what I honestly most know her from, because I did watch that movie and she's the main character in it. Other thing people might know her from, she was in the show She's Gotta Have It, the Spike Lee show. So it's a TV show, but just for me, because I have not seen that show, it's not The Bear. And I think it is hard to compare any streaming show now to The Bear or like Stranger Things in terms of just being humongous breakout successes. DeWanda Wise, interestingly, 40 years old, 5'6", and from Maryland. So we have another American. I don't know if she has any more experience, maybe with accent work. I do think the age is interesting there, because very different pick than Ayo. But I think because that is what a lot of comic readers see when we see Storm, is an X-Men who has been around for a little longer than everybody else, that feels more natural to me. Besides that, though, I really don't have a huge opinion on her either. Like, so far from what I've seen, she's a good enough actor. She was not my overall Storm pick, but I do think I had her at like number 2. I think we'll see more Storms in the future. I also think it's interesting, people have said that they may try to age up young T'Challa somehow, maybe just reset it with the Secret Wars, or, I don't want to say Kang could shoot him with the time gun because Kang's not going to be around anymore, but some similar character, Doctor Doom, could shoot him with the time gun and he could just age up to being an adult. If we wanted to do the Storm Black Panther relationship from the comics, I think that would be interesting, and then that would very heavily depend on how old that Black Panther is. Like, if it was still Chadwick, I would kind of see DeWanda fitting there a little bit better maybe than Ayo, just because I see him as closer in age and like kind of class. Again, a lot of this comes down to class, right? Ayo plays 20-year-olds. He plays a 30-year-old in my head, and DeWanda Wise plays 30-year-olds as well. But all of those pale in comparison to the one I'm kind of interested in out of these 4 that I'm going to cover today. Because, Jack Champion, sure, maybe not my first pick for Cyclops. Ayo and DeWanda could maybe be Storms, but again, doesn't really tell me too much about what they're looking for Storms, especially because there's such a gap in their age and they, play different parts. But then we have Margaret Qualley for Rogue. This one I think is very interesting. Now, I'm totally on the Keke Palmer for Rogue train. I think that is a really cool pick. She's obviously very excited about it. I think it's the kind of bold choice that would get people interested in this movie. Although it's an X-Men movie, people will be interested in it. And I don't know, I just really like Keke Palmer because she's in Nope, which is one of my favorite movies of the last decade. And I think she's great in it. And I think she can sell an accent. We know that. Margaret Qualley, however, a very different choice, and not one I think a year ago that I would have felt really strongly about. For context, she is 30, she is 5'8", and she's from Montana, which is just to say none of these actors are not from America. So any accents or anything like that, they're going to have to figure out. And in this case, she's not from the South. However, and I haven't seen this in her filmography, I'm going to assume she could probably put together a Southern accent that's passable. Most American actors seem to be able to. People probably know Margaret Qualley from the show Maid, or her role as Pussycat in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But most recently, she's gotten a lot of attention for her role as Sue in The Substance. And this is where I think this role gets interesting, right? Because those other 2 roles, I do think Pussycat has a bit of Rogue in her. She has actually a lot of Rogue in her. She's somewhat loud, she'll put her feet up on your car without asking you. I don't think Rogue has to work like that because she can also be very guarded. I love X-Men Evolution Goth Rogue, but I also love Rogue who has a big personality. I think that's a super fun way to play that character. And she did feel very down-to-earth girl next door, which I think is very important for Rogue. That's something that, as much as I like that for certain other characters, I think that is essential for Rogue. She needs to kind of feel like a person whereas Storm needs to feel like a goddess, Rogue needs to feel like a person, because so much of her issues are very personal. But again, she has a flying brick, which usually comes with that bold personality. Flying brick is you can fly and you can punch and you're strong and invulnerable. You pretty much toss Rogue at a Sentinel and she'll, toss her hair and then do a, power bomb on the Sentinel until it dies. I don't know if that's a power bomb. I don't watch enough wrestling to know if what she does in the first episode of X-Men 97 is or not. But when I saw The Substance, I did see something different for Margaret Qualley, which is this just energy. And you see it a lot, in Sue performing. But I do think Sue on the show, the talk show where she's being interviewed, I can see some Rogue there. But I think Rogue can read, is very friendly, has that kind of Southern hospitality, that charm. And I think even though Sue is not Southern in that movie, that does kind of feel right. Smiley, kind of flirty, but also deeply, upset, deeply angry. I do think there's a case, especially after Substance, that just Margaret Qualley, like, she's very, very talented. She can do a huge range of emotions. She can go big. She doesn't seem to be afraid of very much. I also really like her in that movie Sanctuary, where she plays a dominatrix. I think she's a huge, like, up-and-coming star that people would get very excited about showing up in this. I think she would be a really good Rogue. But this is the thing with her and Jack Champion, and maybe other X-Men around that age. Rogue comes into the X-Men when the X-Men already exist as a bad guy who is being led astray by Mystique and the Brotherhood of Mutants or whatever. And the idea seems to be, at least to me, that she is a little bit younger. She reads as like a teenager or young adult there. So I don't think I want a Rogue that's older than my Cyclops. Like, that just feels weird to me. And if I have to pick one of them, I'll pick her. Like, her and Harris Dickinson, that could totally work. Right now, we have like a group, right? Her, Harris Dickinson, say DeWanda Wise, Sadie Sink, and Julia Butters. That all kind of fits together nicely. I would say maybe I want someone a little bit older than Sadie Sink, but I think for Jean Grey, that's tough. Could Margaret Qualley play Jean Grey? Yeah, maybe. I do think, again, because of Substance, I can read her really well as Rogue. I like that a lot. But I think that means she could also be a good Jean. Either way, this is very interesting. I'm very excited about this. I'm going to continue making videos as we get new updates and new rumors, and we get followed up on some of those rumors. Eventually, we're going to have actual casting, which is so exciting. If you enjoy that, follow this channel, like the videos, all that stuff. And if you want to see these videos early, check out this video's sponsor, Nebula. Nebula is a subscription streaming service that I helped to create with a bunch of my other YouTube friends. People you definitely know if you like my channel, like Patrick Willems, Captain Midnight, Big Joel, H Bomber Guy, Princess Weeks, and a bunch of others. Go to the Culture tab and just poke around. You will find someone you already love. And for my Nando V Movies and Nando Cut videos, the entire Nando Cinematic Universe, they all go up early on Nebula. The Nando V Movies videos are usually a week early. The Nando Cut videos are usually closer to a day or so. But when it comes to a movie review, that can mean the difference between me recommending you immediately see a movie like Deadpool and Wolverine, or me warning you that you immediately see a movie like Madam Web. Either way, see Madam Web. Madam Web's great. You can also download videos to the Nebula app and watch them wherever you want. And we're adding new creators every day. We have guest passes. It's really incredible. And speaking of incredible, Nebula is already a steal at $60 a year, $5 a month. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, you can get a year of Nebula for $36. That is $3 a month. It's an incredible deal. Again, go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut. You're going to love it. That's all I got. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.